Welcome to another episode of One of Us Knows What They're Talking About, and the other one is you. I'm Lori Birch, your host. Join us as we discuss and unpack wills, trusts, estate planning, and probate law in a way that's actually informative, interesting, and, well, hopefully entertaining. Because if you don't have a will, the state of Texas has one for you. Let's dive in. We're going to talk about, I haven't looked at Sam and Sara's list. I don't want to.
I wouldn't.
It's better if I don't.
No.
Estate planning for blended families.
Woo.
Woohoo. What are blended families?
It's when you take, no, I'm not going to say that.
Let's be very delicate.
No, you have to say it.
Blended families.
No, while Sarah's recording, I won't say it anyway.
Okay, good. Because you can't trust her to edit it out.
Oh God, no, I don't want this to be recorded anywhere. But blended families is when you take people who have been in sometimes prior marriages, sometimes just prior relationships, and they come with, I don't know, other people and kids, and they just kind of smush them together.
I'm a blended family.
You're a blended family?
Yeah. I'm the only pure child between my parents.
Wow.
I knew this would come up. Put this down.
Pure.
Pure.
Are you purebred?
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you from Nazi Germany? Jeez, Sam.
Oh, but my parents had a kid each before me, and then got married. Well, they got married after I was born, but I'm also out of wedlock.
Jeez, Sam, you're just like calling out your family.
I said it over Christmas, and my mom was like, "Yeah, you're a bastard." And I was like, "Yeah, you didn't have to say it like
That's
that."
fair. But wait, I need to remember. Isn't like one of them technically your cousin, your sister?
No, they're technically cousins.
Oh, your sisters are cousins to each other.
Yeah. Sorry to my brother if you're hearing this.
That's what it was.
But yeah, like
Sorry, Tony.
My sister on my dad's side. No, my sister on my mom's side, her dad has a twin. That twin had children with the mother of my other sister's mother. Makes sense.
We're gonna need to sugar packet this out for Sarah.
Yeah, I had to do
I'm trying to draw.
I had to do a diagram last time for you guys.
You did, because it was necessary. But they're cousins.
Yeah.
So they're half siblings and also cousins.
They're not siblings. They're siblings through me.
They're step siblings.
Yeah,
oh, because you're the great uniter, Sam. They're siblings through your parents, not you. You had nothing to do with that.
Okay, they're step siblings and also cousins.
Yes.
Yeah.
Whoa.
So sorry to my family for this.
It's fine.
So not to be outdone, but I do need to share a little bit of a blended family story. So my father has, been married and divorced a handful of times. And so the wife after my mom, no, the wife after my mom. Yes. She, when they started dating or hanging out, she had a 3-year-old. And so she started referring to her mom's new friend as Uncle Lauren. And which I think that's kind of a strange thing, just to refer to non-relative adults as uncle or aunt. But that's actually not the thrust of my story. So Uncle Lauren, and then they decided to be more serious and open about their relationship, and they got engaged to be married. And so my father was going to become her father. And her mother was just very open about letting her daughter just explore how she wanted to express her feelings and everything. And so we went through a really fun transition period where she called my father Uncle Daddy.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
And which I'm fine with behind closed doors, but it was said way too much in public.
Yeah, I think that's the piece of it. Whenever it gets to a point
And
where
you
you're saying that
just
to other people, it's like, I'm sorry, do we need to call service
because
here?
when you know the context is kind of sweet, right? But when you hear this out in public, Uncle Daddy, I don't know that you really know what to make of that. And I think the true story is probably the last thing you would think of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sarah, do you have any blended family stories?
No, I am part of a blended family, but it's not. There's no drama. There's no.
Sarah, I'm sorry, but the fact that everybody shows up to the holidays, no matter what, is a little odd. Even if you're like remarried to somebody else and you bring along your, it's a little odd.
They do it. They did in my family too.
It's a little odd.
They do what?
Sarah.
Okay. So, but blended families that does bring a definite wrinkle to estate planning when it comes to planning in Texas specifically. And so when we talk about some of the demographics of people who are most in need of making sure that they have a solid estate plan, we usually say blended families are one of the highest on that list. And one of the reasons is because of how it interplays with community property, being a community property state. And so a scenario that I'll run through is, let's just use a house, because people's homes are something that are sometimes people's greatest, if not most emotional asset that they have. So if you let me just run through this scenario. Let's say we have a hypothetical couple named Joe and Sarah. Sorry, Sarah, but this is what I'm used to giving the example for, and it's actually not a hypothetical couple. So Joe was married before, had 2 kids, got divorced, met Sarah with an H, we'll just say that.
Yeah.
Met Sarah, got married, bought a house. Joe's driving home one day on the tollway, gets in a car accident, passes away, no will. Who owns the house?
It's complicated.
I mean, it's complicated, but it is a clear answer. Do I need to be concerned that nobody knows the answer?
Oh, I thought you were just being like, who owns the house? And you were going to keep going.
I'm just curious, like in that scenario, does anybody know? Excellent. Okay.
Oh, I thought Sarah was
well, Sarah looked like she was going to answer. Hold on.
No.
Take a stab, Sarah.
Sarah's the one who needs to know that answer the least.
I've seen the video before.
Oh,
it makes it worse.
Great.
Do you remember?
Okay. So look, this is painful. So let me take my misery. And so the fact that Joe has children from another marriage triggers community property state laws in Texas, where those children would actually inherit his half of the community property. Sarah would retain hers. And then what gets extra fun is, let's say the kids are underage and you can't inherit money or property outright if you're underage. So Joe's got to, or the court has to appoint someone to oversee the kid's inheritance. Who do you think a judge would likely select?
Their other parent.
Their mom. So essentially, Sarah ends up managing her home with her deceased husband's ex-wife. So it's one illustration of the fun of the blended family situation. And I'll go a step further, and something that I don't think you learn in law school. I've learned it the hard way with having the fact pattern play out with actual cases. But when somebody gives a child up for adoption or severs their parental rights, that's actually only severing the rights that the parent has to the child, but not necessarily heirship rights of the child to the parent. And so if you have one of these situations where someone passes away without a plan, then these children will be considered heirs of the deceased person. And it can trigger all the things of bank accounts, other assets, homes, and all of that actually going not to a surviving spouse, but being shared with others. And speaking of the Sam situation, in your case, there is a child of the marriage. So let's say Joe and Sarah had a child together, and then same scenario, he dies without a will. Who owns the house then? Does that change anything?
I mean, Sarah's still, well, not Sarah, Sam's still his child, so.
So, because they're still children from a different relationship or outside the marriage, his half gets divided among all his children. So that would include a child that Joe and Sarah had together, as well as the two other children.
Woo.
It's just wild and wacky stuff. The other thing is that when you have adult stepchildren, and part of the bottom line, I mean, the answer to all of this stuff is to get a plan in place and get it done the right way with a knowledgeable law firm that knows how to guide you, because you don't want to be in these situations when it's too late, or when emotions are at a high. And so it happens with adult stepchildren quite often is they do have more leverage than another family member when it comes to, is someone in the hospital? Are there medical decisions that need to be made? We already talked about inheritance, but what about if you have Alzheimer's or dementia and there needs to be a guardian appointed? Adult children are almost considered on an equal playing field as a spouse, and that can just lead to a lot of confusion, a lot of battles, and so forth. In fact, there was a time, quite some time ago, that the Collin County probate judge told me that the number one probate contest in his court is stepchildren and their step parent. He said that is the number one reason for fighting in his court, because it's messy. It can be messy. The other thing that sometimes people have to think about, especially since it is a community property state, is how do they want to treat the kids? Because anybody can do what they want, right? I often say in client meetings, it's Burger King, have it your way. But typically, a married couple with children will say, if I die, I want everything to my spouse, vice versa. If we both pass, then equally to our kids. And, if they're underage, then it can go into a trust. Here's the trustees. But if they're adults or of age, then it just equally goes to them. I mean, that's kind of the bread and butter standard. And even if that's your plan, and even if that's the default laws of Texas, the cost and time to get there, it is really ridiculous, frankly, that if you just have a proper plan in place, you can get to the same conclusion Texas would get for you, but you can get there much more quickly and efficiently and less expensively by having a plan in place. So that's the most common thing. But what do we do when we have children from a previous relationship or marriage? Do we still want to treat them all equally? What if there's a huge age disparity? Let's say you get remarried a little bit later, you already have adult kids, but then you get remarried and now you've got young kids. And the fact of the matter is these older kids are launched, or maybe they're already in college. And if something happened to you and your spouse, the little ones are much more reliant on having these adults who are no longer there to be taking care of them. So do you decide to allocate more money, more assets? Like, how do you account for that scenario? How do you account for the scenario where if you have children just from your marriage, but then there's children outside that marriage, in theory, and trust me, this doesn't always work out that way, but in theory, those kids have a whole nother parent to rely on if you and your spouse die. But if you and your spouse die, the kids you have together only have you to rely on. And so what actually makes the most sense of how to plan for that? And then we have another scenario that we see quite often where people get remarried later in life. Maybe they've been widowed or whatnot, and they are getting married for the love and companionship that marriage brings, but not for any sort of financial need. So they want to make sure that if they pass away, that whatever's theirs goes to their kids, and then that can be a little nuanced. So this is actually where premarital or postmarital agreements can be quite helpful. As unromantic as people think they are, they think this is only in contemplation of a marriage dissolving, but it actually can help with an estate planning piece to make sure that we've made very clear whose assets and what portion of assets belong to each person, and how would those then be distributed upon death. And there's lots of strategies we can employ, and sometimes it does add complexity. I mean, we have situations where you do a premarital agreement, and then they each have their own trusts for their own separate assets, and then they have a joint trust for any joint assets. And that can sound really complicated and convoluted, but but when the time comes, it actually can streamline the distribution of what you have, whether it's homes, bank accounts, life insurance, retirement, much more easily. I mean, there's other strategies. None of this is, one size fits all. I mean, maybe it's just retirement accounts or life insurance that you can control through a beneficiary that you want to go to your kids rather than your spouse. But it's all things that are on the table that people really need to consider. And one of the tools, because I know that the three of you are just chomping at the bit to chime in here and talk about it, but one of the tools you could employ is you could, instead of just dividing everything equally, if you've got a his, hers, and ours situation, is put it into a pooled trust upon your death, meaning it's one lump, the assets are still controlled in one trust. And then you can, so that different needs are taken care of. So it doesn't have to be equal distribution. And let's say you do that until the youngest maybe turns 25. So then the thought is they're all launched, they're all good to go. So the youngest is 25, now cash it out, and then everything that's left is treated equally. And then finally, and this isn't specific to a blended family situation, although it does come up there, is if each spouse has a different idea of who they want their assets to go to, sometimes it's a matter of, well, do you say spouse one, you have 50%, so you say where your 50% goes, and spouse two, you have your 50%, you get to say where your 50% goes. So let's say spouse one has one child and spouse two has two children. So 50% would be divided among two children, whereas 50% for the spouse one would go to one child. So it's not equal, but is it equal? Is it equal from the parents? So some couples like that scenario. Other couples like the scenario where you have two, I have one, divided equally among all three of them, so each one gets a third. Are you all following me?
Yeah, but I have a question. So let's say that it is a blended family, and
Venn diagram?
I feel that, we settle on what we want, but then my spouse dies and I decide I can change everything. Can I do that?
I mean, usually yes, depending on how you have things set up. There's ways to prevent that from happening. but you have to decide between ease and accessibility versus control. And some people will choose the honor system with their surviving spouse.
It's really the honor system. Whenever they start talking about it, you're like, oh,
yeah.
That bridge will be crossed when it comes.
You know what? I'm not here. Look, the clients that come to us, we don't know them personally. We just need to present all the options and scenarios, particularly worst case scenarios. And then it's always the client's job to decide what they want to do. And so if they say that they absolutely trust their surviving spouse to make sure that they won't cut out their kids, then I'm going to trust them, because I think that all three of you would agree that if I told Kimberly that if something happens to her first, I will make sure that the two older kids are not cut out. I think all three of you, knowing us, would be like, we would take that to the bank. There is no doubt in our minds that Lori would do that. So I'm not going to play that position of, no, you got to do it this way, you got to do it that way. I present the scenarios, we present worst case, best case, and then we have to rely on our clients making their own informed choices. The other part is sometimes I love this expression. Sarah, can you find a better expression that gets across the same idea as lesser of two evils?
Okay.
There's got to be something.
Okay.
There's got to be something. Well, she's so good with the words.
Right.
She's a wordsmith, if you will. There's just got to be something better. But basically, the solutions do make things more complicated. It takes control away from surviving spouses. It involves other people, whether it's trust companies or third parties or family members. And so it's not always pretty. There can also be tax consequences involved with it. But again, you've got to decide what the priorities are, because there's pros and cons. There's no magic wand. What are we giggling about?
How do you feel about best of a bad bunch? Best of a bad
I'm laughing at. Mine's very similar. The better of two bad options.
That actually sounds like, if I said, Sarah, can you define lesser of two evils? That actually sounds like the definition you would give to me. It's just kind of use some synonyms and reorder the words. That's how Sarah defines things.
How about least detrimental option?
The more tolerable choice.
Oh.
Okay, I like that. The more tolerable choice.
Sarah, put a pin in that one.
Put a pin in that one. About
I need you to put this in our channel.
Among undesirable.
Wait, Cynthia, you got to start over. I got to hear the whole thing.
Most favorable among undesirable choices. It's wordy.
It is wordy.
The lesser bad.
The lesser of two bads.
No, just the lesser bad.
The lesser bad.
Use a million words whenever two will do. Lesser bad.
Lesser bad.
That's what Grammarly would make you do.
Yeah.
Because Grammarly takes away all the fluff and eloquence of sentences and words and just like breaks it down to the bare bones. And I'm sorry, I think sometimes you do need to say in order to.
Yeah.
Right.
Or as well as. Take that, Grammarly.
Yeah.
What was yours again, Sarah? I want to revisit it.
Yeah, I want to revisit.
It's either the more tolerable choice or the better of two bad options.
No, the more tolerable choice.
Yeah, the more tolerable choice.
Anyway, is the fan on in your office?
Yes,
is it hot there?
It's really hot in here. Okay, my half of the office is like a sauna. The other half of the office is like a freezer.
Yeah.
Like a meat locker over
we
there.
have, like, in Marcel's office, we have the heat turned all the way, and we have for like 2 days, and you can't even tell. Like, it's so freezing.
But the neighbors can.
Yeah.
They haven't complained yet. They don't have Eddie to complain to anymore.
Well, they have somebody else.
Do we know their name yet?
I do. I have to search in my emails to find it. It's not Eddie.
Hi, Eddie.
Hi, Eddie. No longer with us. Okay. So anyway, there's lots of considerations when it comes to blended families, and perhaps you should try to not have unintended children, and or if you have children with your spouse, try not to divorce them, because I can tell you from a legal standpoint, it gets very messy.
But Lori, I have a very serious question that has absolutely never come up. What if you don't know that you have a child out there?
Oh.
What if you don't know?
Do you remember that one client, and we can say this stuff because we don't say names, the one client that really wanted to add that clause in there about no other children, even if children ever claim to be my children, I am hereby excluding them?
Yeah.
And
Wild.
we were inquiring, well, is there a concern or something? No, just in case.
You never know.
Sure. There's a concern there.
Well, and I think this is probably a good opportunity to mention our threesome baby.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
So, Cynthia, why don't you regale us with a very real life story, probate story that we experienced?
Okay. So we had this person who passed away. They didn't have a will. They at the point had a partner, passed away. Nothing. So we file things with the court as we're supposed to. We're going through the process of having to wait our periods, the applications. We get to the hearing. At the hearing, we're going through, and there is somebody who chimes in and says, well, I'm the decedent's child. And we're like, wait, hold up. We need to back up. What do you mean you're the decedent's child? And they're like, yeah, in open court, this is how we found out. Apparently, they knew that they were the result of a threesome when our decedent was much younger with the people who are on the birth certificate for this person. And that's how we found out in open court.
Amazing.
It was real great.
Yeah.
And our
that
client
out.
is just like, what do we do now? So the court, they have to do their due diligence, people. It's not like they can just take them at their word, or they can just okay, cool, let's just add this in. It's like, no, that holds the process. You have to do the court will issue paternity testing. They will do research. They will have somebody look into their background. If you don't have things planned out, the court's got to stop everything. That was real.
Sarah seems to have a thought.
Did the person know of this child?
The decedent?
Yeah, did they know this child existed?
I can't remember. And I don't remember what we were told by the client.
Yeah, it's been a while.
If the decedent knew or not, Sarah. This was a while. This was maybe a 2021-ish, early 2022 hearing. So it's been a hot minute, but the other members of that endeavor, they were like, oh, it's our child. So
endeavor. I'll give you another real life probate story that has to do with children from different people. And I may have told this one before, but it was one where there was no will. Of course, it's, these stories come when there is no plan, right? So no will. So we had to do what's called a determination of heirship, which is where the court appoints an attorney ad litem, and they have to research who the person was married to, what kids they have, and then they'll submit a report saying, yes, these are the children, or this is a surviving spouse, or these are the heirs. And then Texas defines, who gets what and what percentages and all of that. So this seemed to be a pretty straightforward matter because it was adult children. There were 4 of them. And our client was one of them who was in Texas that was leading the charge. And their I can't remember whether his mother or father passed away, but we'll just say it was father had passed away. Everything was buttoned up, no problem there. So when mom passed away, she died without a will, and we had to do a determination of heirship. So we thought this was going to be easy peasy. File it with the court, 4 kids, no problem. It's going to get, they were of the marriage, no children from a previous marriage, and let's divide things equally to the 4. And so everything's going smoothly, everything like that. And then I'm sitting at work and I get an email from the attorney ad litem saying, hey, I think there's 4 other children.
Oh.
And I'm like, what? No, because this was just so slam dunk. I'm like, there is no way, no way. And so I call our client up and I'm like laughing. I'm like, dude, you'll never believe what the ad litem said. He said that he thinks your parents had 4 other kids. And it's silence on the phone. And then I hear a deep breath. He's like, oh boy. And I'm like, what? So it ends up that the ad litem looked up the obituary, and the obituary had listed 8 kids. So my client said, look, when we were younger, my aunt and uncle passed away, and we took in their 4 kids, and my parents helped raise them. But they were, is that cousins? I don't know.
Yeah, I think
cousins. They were, you know, cousin step siblings, right? Sam. Anyway, but he was like, but they were never adopted, nothing like that. And so I get back to the ad litem, tell them this is the situation. They're like, okay, great. Well, I need their contact information. I'm going to talk to each one of them just to confirm they weren't adopted. Great. Okay. Crisis averted, right? No, because then what comes out is 3 of them were like, oh, yes, that was a situation. No problem. No, we weren't adopted, blah, blah, blah. But then the 4th one was like, well, wait a minute. I thought we were adopted. And then how do you prove the absence of something? You know, like when your package doesn't get delivered and Amazon will say, can you take a picture of your problem? And it's like, what are you, do I have to take a, and I just dealt with a company. It's a great company, so I'm not going to mention the name, but it's an electric toothbrush company for the kids. And it's really, really great. But one of them that we got wasn't holding a charge. And we just got it in the last few months. So I messaged the company. I said, hey, we got this one, order number, blah, blah, blah. And it's not keeping a charge. And so I know this is just standard procedure. Like it's probably just a bot that's responding to me at this point. They're like, can you send us a video of the problem? And I'm thinking, how do I send a video of a toothbrush not keeping its charge? Like, do I do a time-lapse video where I like set up my camera and start it and then just let it, run out of battery after 2 hours instead of the 2 weeks it should last? Like, is that what they need? So, I essentially responded with that answer, by the way. And we got the new toothbrush yesterday. So, which is why, come to Birch Law. We will wear people down.
Yeah.
That could be another, hey, Sarah, that could be another
billboard
mantra of ours. Yeah. We will wear people down. Speaking of billboards, you might want to edit this out. I don't know. But there is this firm in San Antonio called, oh no, now I'm forgetting it. It's, I'm going to be wrong about this, but it's something like Fight and Win, but it's not fight. It's like chase or something, but it's spelled differently. And Win is the Nguyen.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So that's the name of the firm. Gosh, I wish I could remember the name of the first lawyer. I guess billboards don't work. Anyway, they have 2 consecutive billboards that say, we fight, you win, but it has the spelling of their last names.
Push and win.
Push.
Nice.
And how's push spelled?
Pusch.
Right. So it says we push, so and then the very next one says you win.
Nice.
Yeah, Birch doesn't really have that kind of.
Yeah.
No, but we will wear you down. Anyway, back to my story. The funny thing is all the siblings got in on it, and they're basically like, "You dip, we were not adopted." And so he was like, "Okay, fine, we weren't adopted." So we were able to proceed after that. But this this is just what could happen. That's a form of a blended family, is it not?
Yeah.
So it's good to have these things all put out. So Sam just posted, I guess, is that their website?
Yeah, that's their website.
Okay. So it's not showing the actual spelling of their names. Or let me make it
has
bigger.
It at the top.
Yeah. It's very small. The billboards really drive home the point, or else I wouldn't have even thought about it. So the billboards make the last name very clear. Anyway, it's clever. I guess I'll need to find some attorneys with more interesting last names.
Than the
we
ones
dunk.
Have?
You go, Balakrishnan. Don't turn us away.
Oh, Louis, that one's good.
We're Shruti for you. Sarah, you may or may not edit this part out. I really don't care, but you have to cut this part out so that Duncan and Shruti can.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm gonna do a soft no on that.
Don't turn us
really
away.
Has a lot to say.
On you. I could do this all day.
I'm aware.
Okay, so before we conclude this episode, I would be remiss if I skipped over the Sam and Sara segment.
Ooh.
That's right.
Taylor Swift.
Sam and Sara segment.
Yeah. And so the topic was blended families today. The Sam and Sara, what did that mean to you? And what did you decide to share with us?
What it meant to us. Yeah. We decided to go
wow.
With
it's so dumb.
Things not to blend in a blender.
What?
Things you should not blend.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Okay. So the first one, a beehive.
Okay.
Number 2, your will.
Number 3, a live grenade.
Number 4, feedback from your boss from your review.
Number 5, grandma's figurines, specifically the porcelain ones.
Number 6, number this is so stupid. Number 6, the cast from Queer Eye.
Pre Bobby or post Bobby?
Pre, because I don't care about post Bobby.
Wait, is this the OG Queer Eye or is this the new ripoff
the
version?
Newer one.
I'll say newer.
Okay, don't touch the old one. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Number 7, hot dogs and ice cream.
Number 8, anything with fire.
And finally, number 9, your family member's thesis that they spent years working on.
Where do you all actually come up with this stuff? Oh.
Well, yeah. Can y'all go back to looking on Reddit?
It's so bad.
Oh.
Listen,
that is a burn.
That is where we got most of our, the signs. Oh, wait, no, I think that was actually Google, wasn't it?
I found them on Pinterest.
Yeah. Yeah, we normally get our answers from
We're
Reddit.
so tired today.
What? Why are you tired today?
I don't know.
Okay. But anyway, lots of good things to blend, lots of bad things to blend. But the most important thing is to have a plan if you are blended.
That you don't put in a blender.
Thanks for listening. And just to cover all our bases about what you just heard, I'm sorry and you're welcome. Make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode. And tell your friends about us. We do webinars and live events. The best way to stay up to date is to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube. Links are in the show notes. If there's a topic you'd like us to cover, maybe you have a question you'd like us to answer, or maybe you just want to say hi, hit the link in the show notes or go to birch-law.com/podcast and fill out the contact form.
Much better.
Yeah, I thought that had a lot of energy.